Hi. The subject is happiness. Now, finding happiness may be a cliche, or worse yet, just plain stupid, because the world is going through certain things, and how could you possibly be happy because of the circumstances in the world? However, and you felt it in your own body, you function in a better way when you feel this thing called happiness. And in fact, I would argue that happiness is the absence of unhappiness. So when I'm not preoccupied with people coming at me from the outside, people that have judgments, even threats to life and limb, or circumstances that change around me, the loss of a job, or the loss of relationships, or anything that destabilizes my social environment, or pain, aches, pains, those, I can become a thing of pain. I lose my identity completely and just become a thing that hurts. So does an individual have to be victimized by those things? Well, there's a sweet spot where, no, you don't have to be victimized by those things. And yet, in a sense, it's a muscle that has to be developed. And the best way to develop that muscle is to be aware of ways of coping with these things that seem to come at us from the outside, but in fact, depending on our temperament, our constitution, and the intensity of the circumstances, and the skills that we've developed, depending on those variables, every form of unhappiness, every one, bar none, can be dealt with sort of internally through awareness and through certain kinds of activities, practices, cues that you give yourself. We're going to cover those. This is the introduction. The first video I do in this series is going to go through 7 steps, stages, call them activities, call them awarenesses, 7 of them. Each, and together they constitute a basket of skills. Each one in itself is a skill that interrelates with the others as well. So in this first one, I'll introduce these 7 ideas, and the subsequent videos will go into each piece. And hopefully by the end, all of us will be happy. I'll be as happy as you are, because, the reason I think about these things is because I go through unhappiness on a regular basis. So let's get on with it. Hi. Let's talk about happiness. Now, first of all, recognize that every living creature wants to be happy. Even single-celled organisms, if you look at them and the way they move, they want what we would call happiness. Happiness being what? An absence or a lessening of suffering. That's sort of a Buddhist terminology. So happiness is relative for us. For our purposes, happiness is a relative state. You can be in a position where you're suffering a lot and it's lessened a little bit, and you experience the lessening of your suffering or your pain or your difficulty as happiness. So you have to recognize it's not an absolute. It's also not continuous. Theoretically, and I haven't experienced it that I know of, there is an absolute happiness that is a continuous state. But that's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about just sort of, feeling lousy or worthless. And how do you get to a place to where you don't feel lousy and you don't feel worthless, like that? There are 7 ways that I'm outlining here. I would say, believe in something infinite. You have to believe in something much, much larger than yourself. That's believe in. Number 2, talk to someone. That's find someone to talk to. Number 3, find your means of self-expression. Whatever that is, you may have to look for it, and you may think it's obvious, and maybe it's not that obvious. But find your means, your unique means of self-expression. That's number 3. Number 4, be of use to someone. And some people would say that means be in a service capacity, but I'm saying just be in a situation where you feel useful to other people. A lot of times that has to do with getting strokes or compliments from other people. And it can come in very simple ways, and it can be in a career, and it can just be random. Be of use to someone. Find yourself in that state of feeling useful to other people, or, a larger cause. 5 is establish some wisdom sources. And it can be, some people are going to say they read the Bible or whatever. I'm just saying find some wisdom somewhere, some knowledge, some information that can infuse you in a way that makes you feel expanded. You want to, that's part of it. Happiness has to do with a sense of expansion. So establish some wisdom sources somehow. Number 6, always strive for self-honesty. If you strive for anything, rather than striving for goals or whatever, strive to be aware of yourself, of what you really are, your strong points, your weak points. Strive for self-honesty. That's number 6. And number 7, recognize that you have a toolkit. As a human being, no matter who you are, where you are, what your condition is, you do have a unique toolkit, unique to you. And it has to do with various things. We're going to go through these, more specifically. Let's go back to believe in something infinite. A lot of people will say, well, I believe in God or something like that. It's not just enough to just believe in something that's greater than yourself. Like, well, God is great, or nature is great, or whatever. Your family is greater than you, so you believe in your family, you believe in your loved ones. No, this has to be infinite. And I'm going to say, just as a placeholder, it has to be a belief in something infinite. There's an infinite expansion. Apparently, clip speakers are great because they have, like one speaker weighs 200 pounds or something, and they have these boards inside the speaker that mock or recreate what they call an infinite baffle. Infinite baffle, meaning the larger the resonant space behind that speaker, the better it sounds. Then, they can have great hardware in there, a great mid-range, great woofer and a tweeter. But that doesn't do much without this resonant space. And you can feel that when you take a speaker, even a cheap speaker, and put it in a corner versus having it floating in the room. Okay, that's what belief does. That's what belief in the infinite does. It provides you as sort of an infinite baffle. Now, how do you know that you have an infinite baffle? You have to go into this. You have to go into this infinite space and ask yourself some questions. Like, you have to contemplate, how does it work? How does this infinite space, this infinite thing, this huge thing, how does it work? And why does it work? You got to contemplate this thing and go into it and recognize that you're like an ant contemplating a mountain. And that's the point. Be an ant contemplating a mountain. It's important to go through that process and spend some time with it. Really go into it. And I'm not talking about God. Well, I'll put it this way. I'm talking about God. The point is something much, much larger than yourself, no matter what it is. If it's fine, if it's evolution, if it's science, if it's human potential, find something that you really can experience as infinitely beyond you. Can be the stream of the ancestors. If you go back and back and you study where you came from, the roots, and realize it goes back and back, and no matter how far back you go in your ancestors, you cannot find the beginning of it. You can't ever. I've heard it said somewhere that if you can experience your ancestry 7 generations back, you will be enlightened. Try it sometime. I think I have, and it's kind of futile. I don't know enough to do it. I get waylaid somewhere around my grandparents. And then, how do I figure in this? this grand scheme of infinity, whether it has to do with nature processes or the mind with a capital M or human potential movement. How do I figure? Me, really? Is it, am I just a standing by the side of the road? I'm going through it? Well, no. And so this is a contemplation. So a belief in something much greater than yourself, but that has to be a contemplative experience. There has to be some time pondering this thing and my role in it. Very important. Now, the next one, which I said, is have someone, okay, so that's, I think, foundational, okay? Belief in this hugeness. It's necessary, and you can't cheat, okay? Go there and try to find it. Next thing, have someone to talk to. Anybody. Find somebody to talk to. You have to be able to relate to another sort of a human being. Now, you might be a hermit, So let's say you're not a hermit. That means you buy groceries, you do this, you do that. You're in relation to other human beings. It's important to relate to someone. Now, it's fine. In fact, the Dalai Lama himself said he does this. If he goes to a hotel room, he'll actually collar somebody. He'll grab the housekeeper and ask him serious questions about the state of the Tibetan people, what he should do about some big issue. He doesn't care. The idea is for you to interact with another person on these big questions about yourself. And if you don't have one person that you think is, dialed in enough to tolerate you for 5 minutes, steal somebody else's time. Some guy, somebody that works at the coffee place, somebody that's, I don't know, working at a convenience store. Just get them in a moment when they're not doing anything and say, hey, you know what would you do if you were me? I'm going broke. I've got a terminal illness. What would you do if you were me? And then just work through it with them, whatever it is. Work through this thing with them. Have someone to talk to. It's an important way of puncturing the sense of being alone and the sense of because unhappiness is typically lonely. I mean, Missouri does not love company. I wanted to put that on a license plate. Missouri loves company. It's a joke. Number three, means of self-expression. That doesn't necessarily mean the obvious thing. Like if you're a dancer, it doesn't mean your means of self-expression is a dancer. If you're an artist, it doesn't mean your means of self-expression is that you're an artist. If you're, you could be, let's say, an introvert. And the means of self-expression might be critically somewhere in the realm of you speaking out or being, verbally, visible, something on the radar screen to go out of yourself. But you have to be honest about yourself, which is another one of the steps, about what is that means of self-expression. As an example, I've been drawing all my life. Everybody's told me, Phil, you're an artist, you're this, you're that. Okay, great. So I draw. I got tons and tons and tons of proof. Do I feel like that's a means of self-expression? Luckily, that level of expression, that level of interaction with the world has been built into my life. And I'm extremely grateful for that aspect. That self-expression in that way has been built in. But is that it? Well, no, not really. To be honest with you, that's why I'm doing this thing here. That's why I'm doing this. The YouTube channel is because I talk. And I want to talk. Now, I had to confront this some years back, where it's like, Phil, shut the F up, will you? Nobody wants to hear you. So no, everybody's going to hear me. You're going to get it. So what's nice about this is, you can shut me off. Now, and I have to deal with it, right? If I get 2 views and 10,000 criticisms or whatever it is that I might wander into, I have to be prepared for that in this, but that's what this is. It's a means of expressing myself because I really enjoy the rub of talking with other people, which goes to talk with someone. I'm a good one for that. People they could seek me out to talk to. Why? Because I want to talk. I want to hear it. I want to relate to people in that way, even though I'm kind of an introvert. I don't really want to be out there that much, but it's really essential to my happiness to be in this. Okay, so 3, find someone to talk to. Like I said, the clerk, the gas station person, the whatever, some random person on the street, the cop that's sitting there not doing anything. Talk to somebody about something and do it so that they don't think you're particularly creepy. Number 4, be of use to someone. Now, the important thing here is not for you to go out and serve the world. I want to find somebody to make a sandwich for. That's not what this is for. To be of use to someone means for me to feel useful. Again, I've been able to draw, and I do illustrations. If that illustration sells, if it hits, I get the selfish satisfaction of feeling that I have been of use to somebody, if I can help in a certain way. And it doesn't mean, just every tall person needs to be able to get stuff off the top shelf for other people. It's got to serve you. There's a term in Hinduism called swadharma, meaning your personal needs, your personal dharma, your personal truth. So your need to be useful, it needs to have a personal quality. How do you personally want to interact with usefulness? It might be in one of the so-called corporal works of mercy, and it might not be. It might be something else. So, or you might have to understand yourself as being useful to people by, I don't know what, the way you trim your yard or something, whatever it is, the way you dress, someone might look at you and go, wow, there's an idea, whatever it is. Go into it and find out how you are of service, how you are useful in this world, working with other people. I think that's critical. Be of use to someone. Number 5, establish your wisdom sources. Now, what do I mean? Unless you've dedicated yourself to, let's say, Jesus Christ, and you're in the New Testament, or you have just decided that it's the inspired word of God and you relate to it that way, and that, that has to do with identifying something bigger than yourself. Then your scripture is some sort of a proof, or, it comes out of that. And I think that's great, but I can't recommend that. I myself, the first place I found it was, kind of like it relatively New Age means. The New Age was kind of full of that kind of stuff. Like, I really, really liked Wayne Dyer. Had a tape set. I listened to Wayne Dyer dozens of times. I found different people that were that way. Not all of them do the trick. And in fact, I can't listen to any of those guys anymore. But at the time, in that place, back, I don't know what, 30 years ago, it was very, very useful to listen to someone like Wayne Dyer, to read channeled, or to read or listen to channeled, so-called channeled messages. Why? Because channels are funny. When you go into the New Age channel thing, it's like somebody says demonic or whatever. That's fine if you think that. But, mostly it's like if any person can say, be wise, and then you kind of go into the state of I will be wise, and you kind of channel, you just start saying wise things. A lot of us have a lot of wisdom, a lot of us do, but it's important to find, so almost any of us can function as a wise guide in a certain context. A lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't really identify ourselves as that, or we can't access that when we require it, whatever that means. So, wisdom sources. Then there's, those can be the spiritual variety, and then there's the self-help variety. Self-help is great. I loved the hot tub gurus. I thought they were great. Hot tub gurus meaning somebody like Leonard or the loving relationship training stuff, a bunch of New Age stuff. And like I wouldn't get anything out of it now, but at the time, at the age of 35 years old or something like that, I found it was great. Hey, how are you going to be immortal? You get into this stuff, and it leads you to other places. And there's other lives, biographies of people. You read the biography of Abraham Lincoln or something like that. And that can be an inspired source of wisdom. Different people like that, Thomas Jefferson. And then, so that's 5. So however you find it, you're going to need something. The purpose here is to inform you. It's an information source. It entrains you to a purer direction towards truth. towards whether it's your truth or the truth. It directs you that way. It's like that wisdom source might be the Bible, might be the Bhagavad Gita, might be the I Ching. Now that's a good point. I hadn't even put that in there. I'm going to say that with this as a subheading, call this 5, subprime, 5 prime 1. It would be to find an oracle, some sort of an oracle. Like I've used different oracles over the years. You can do the simple one of a chit, I think they call it, where it's like it either goes yes or no. Should I do this? Yes or no. You can write things on pieces of paper, scraps of paper, and you throw them down on the floor, and you pick one up. And then you say, is this it? Is that? I know it's the magic 8 ball. I understand that. But I think it's important when you're truly against a sort of a wall to have access to the other side of the wall, whether it's real or not. Whether it's, you just get on the other side of the wall doing a chit. There's tarot. I Ching is a good one where you throw coins, get an I Ching. There's some really, really great I Ching books. It can be a source of wisdom, something that helps you, informs you in a way that it's outside of your everyday vocabulary, outside of your everyday vocabulary. Number 6, now strive for self-honesty. I swear I think that the hardest thing with anybody, and a lot of great source of any pain and suffering, is a lack of self-honesty. Because it's the hardest thing to see. I don't know, not to be dramatic, but how ugly you can be, or how unskilled you can be, or how worthless you have lived your life, or whatever. You be honest, say, hey man, I wasted it. I had all this time, I spent all this time, and it was an absolute waste. It's okay, just sit down with it and let that be that. And some of the wisdom stuff can help you with that, because in the end, what's a great life? What's a useful life? We go back to the bugs and all that and being happy. We all just want to be happy. Everybody. Whether you want to dominate the planet, or whether you just want to be able to feel okay when you wake up in the morning, whatever it is. And those are not mutually exclusive, I bet. I bet they're not mutually exclusive. Everyone wants to be happy. Okay. And then self-honesty, like I said, it is the hard one. And I might go through these and do a separate breakout on each one or several in another video, because I'm going to wrap up. Now, the last one is you have a toolkit. You do have a toolkit. Everybody has a toolkit. A lot of people say, I don't have this, I don't have that. Well, recognize that just a working brain and this right here, these fingers that are connected up. You have the working brain, the fingers are connected up with it. You have an amazing toolkit just right there. If you can walk, if you can talk, amazing tools. Then you can go further and further and understand what is your toolkit. Communication, understanding, you have some degree of health or not. And, I'm going to call it there. You explore that you do have tools and you do have things available. And I wanted to go further in the other thing is that if a person sits down, and I'd say maybe let's go ground zero, I gave 7, and we're done with 7. Now let's go ground zero. Ground zero is, here I am. I'm right here. It's okay. It's quiet. There's the things that are pressing on me, they're not pressing so hard that, it's like they aren't knocking on my door at the moment. So, be in this present moment. Let's say, example, let's say you're hungry. This is a biggie. And you say, I'm hungry. I got to stick something in there. I'm hungry. I got to stick something in my face. I'm depressed. I got to go buy something. I'm depressed. I got to talk to somebody. I'm depressed. Just back off for a second. Give yourself just a little bit of space and say, nothing's really pressing on me. I got to deal with this one all the time myself. Nothing's really pressing on me. I'm okay right now. I do not have to run to Pizza Hut and ruin my week by spending way too much for a pizza that doesn't taste very good. That's my thought, that's an actual example. And instead realize that maybe maybe I go get some block of cheese and some one of those shells of spinach or something. You know, I mean, instead of binging or so-called treating myself. In other words, get as efficient as you can with what satisfies your craving, but mostly give yourself some space before you react and make those kinds of decisions. So make those decisions. I'm going to wrap up by reading these things one more time, what they are. Believe in something much greater than yourself. Talk to someone. Find someone to talk to. 3, find your unique means of self-expression. 4, be useful to someone where you can get some strokes for that contribution. 5, find wisdom sources. 6, strive for self-honesty all the time. And then 7 is find your personal toolkit. You know, that can be physical enhancement, exercise. It could be mind things. It can be just finding out what your talents are. Reflect on what you've got as a toolkit for living this life. And then that should lead to some degree of gratitude, which, of course, everybody says be grateful, and then you'll be happy. I hope this is useful to you. Leave a comment or whatever, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.